Philosophers talk to our times, we the citizens of dystopia. So one of the ways you must characterize, I suppose, modern dystopias is that the entire political and economic world is run for the benefit of, now I would like to say corporations, but I don't know that I mean corporations as they are incorporate, as they ought to be defined in terms of what they are. I rather mean a system which wants to guarantee a certain finite circle of folk infinite opportunities and profit, and will do it through a sequence of short-term asset stripping or maximizing what is there, pumping it out of content in order to guarantee necessary profit, so that the entire system becomes vampiric on its own past. The people it is trying to aid, of course, are the shareholders. So that is a definable but relatively open set of financial institutions, individuals, sets and conglomerates, pension funds as often as not. And the entire system comes about then ensuring the constant wealth generation for this group of people. So the numbers must always look good for this group of people. And in order to do that, the entire system is rigged effectively. Oh, companies do fail, but we'll come on to why that happens a little bit. But shareholders don't. And the overall system doesn't get compromised. And that's kind of been the system that has grown out of the financial crisis of 2008 and the technological boom before that, and the deregulation of the economy from the 1980s. So it creates an economy that is very different from how it says it is. It says it is capitalism. It isn't capitalism. It says it's not capitalism as Marx understood it. And this is not the pre-stage to communism as Marx understood it. Because the profits that are being made are not honest profits made by one big corporation churning out its myriad products. No. They're little squalid financial profits, decisions made by asset stripping what was there, by hollowing it all out and shifting it. The only real products then that matter in such a world are money and information. And that's it. And the problem then, of course, is all the little short-term issues that our definition of freedom beset us with. I meant the world I was brought up with, in the world of the 1980s, where you go to business and they would say, well, our problem are shareholders. We can never make the long-term decisions because of shareholders. And of course, the same was true for politicians. They were defined by a 4-year period in which they needed to engineer success. Well, that basic success driven on a short-term model has become then the absolute begetting sin of all financial institutions, that is, all companies, all corporations. What they need to do is asset strip now. And if the corporation, of course, is big enough, if that particular, and that's what makes them a corporation, if the particular brand, their asset stripping fails because they push it too far, it doesn't matter because there's always others. They can always shift the money that they've pumped out to somewhere else. And the entire thing becomes operations in merchant banking. And those that run it is just a bunch of merchant bankers. So the entire thing then becomes totally distinct from how we understand it. Now you could say, is this the society of the empty symbol? Is Guy Debord and Baudrillard right? Kind of, but kind of not. Because it's not, the emptying out of symbols is being very explicitly driven by a structural system that just simply wants to feed off them, vampiric. You can see it when moments of revolution become simply another corporate badge. I mean the fate of wokeism. I don't like the word woke. I understand why people do, and I understand why it matters, and for a certain cross group, it is terribly important, and that's wonderful, and that's great. I happen to not belong to that group, and I am always ambivalent. I was always ambivalent about bleeding it across because it struck me as one of those words that was likely to be defined in such a way that those people who actually wanted to have genuine equality were going to lose out, in the same way that politically correct used to be. But of course, what then actually has happened to wokeism is that it's become a corporate identity of Disney. Not a wholly owned product, but a partially owned product, where everything must be woke in the most aggressive, ferocious, stupid way imaginable, for yet another bit of bean counting. And when the ability of corporations to take on the brand identity of revolution and turn it into their own brand identity has become unquestionable, you know you're in trouble. You know you're in trouble because the very engines of resistance are allowing themselves to be caught by the same corporate money-making machines that's creating the problem in the first place. And the hollowing out of the entire system is fairly extreme. And that is the bit that is very Baudrillard. The entire system is being hollowed out and rendered meaningless. You see it particularly with things like nations. When people are arrant nationalists and want to paint flags on roundabouts, I'm sitting there wondering what on earth their country means to them. Because I just bet you, I might be wrong, maybe they can all do this, but I bet you they can barely name every king of England from William the Conqueror onwards, let alone Aelfred or Athelstan, the first king of England. And I bet they don't know any history beyond that which is easy, regurgitated, the ladybird corporate version of Britain that has no relevance to the actual history of Britain or their lives. It's just a brand identity, emptied out, turned into just this is your thing, this is your badge. In the same way that something like Cadbury's milk chocolate is now a wholly different product from the product it was, 40 years ago. It was always fairly disgusting and very, very sweet. But since it was bought up by American chocolate, it is no longer the same product. It simply has the same label and the same foil wrapping. But because of the logic of financial planning, the entire way this system is working, which is why it is vampiric, is that you keep all the symbols, you keep all the flags, you keep the chocolate bars looking the same. You keep the Marmite pot looking in the same design. You even keep all the slogans you've always used. But the entire logic of the system is what you do to the product is you gut the product, you change it. You change it, you make all sorts of little choices that will make it cheaper to produce, more mass producible. Easier to fit into a certain set of numbers, not just the corporate numbers that will allow you to maximize profit, even if it minimizes taste, but also all those other nasty little numbers about health guidelines, figures that were invented by the food industry to sell products as often as not, and has no real relevance to our own personal health, where actually what you probably need to eat is a mixed diet and not a mechanically recovered food, and there you're done. As long as it is not ultra processed food, and you do different things, your health problem is over. But that's not the way the corporations want to sell it to us. That is not the way the financial monopolies want to sell it to us. They want to sell it to us as sets of figures. And so every brand becomes an excessive, I've forgotten the word, but a mythologicalization of their own branding. So their own branding, being it the branding of a nation or the branding of a Marmite pot, becomes totally, totally sacrosanct, while the product itself is stripped out, made cheap, rendered totally poisonous. And yet that poison is hid behind all the nutritional guidelines that it suddenly somehow seems to be closer to being reconcilable with, as the stripping out of oil for palm oil and the stripping out of sugar for saccharin looks good upon the figures, even if it will destroy your health. And so, in fact, food becomes in many ways the paradigm case, the obvious illustration of the way that this system works. Something that once was necessary and relatively easy becomes highly problematic and frankly poisonous, as most food becomes ultra-processed and filled with chemicals. And yet, of course, the solution that is imposed or suggested to this chemical hodgepodge of stuff that holds only the brand identity of what once was are yet more chemicals. So people take vitamins to hide that, because their food has no vitamins, and the entire thing becomes yet more ways to sell product. And the entire thing gets utterly sucked out of any value. So it ends up as totally vampiric. And with vampiric and serving systems that are manufactured to necessarily, in the short term, succeed. Because they are always living off the reputation of that which was. And the problem, of course, is with such a system is that it is always very, very hidden. Vampires work in the night. It is not there. And therefore it is hard to put your finger on. Hard to attack. And the new products that it produces, I mean things like AI, are actually serving the vampiric system. They're not serving us. And never were. One of the fascinating things I think about the New World Order is its inability to produce new products. I mean new products as capitalism has always understood them. New sources, new cereals. What it tends to do is endlessly iterate what it already has, rebrand it, or use the branding to hide the fact that it has changed everything on the inside. But what it creates then are financial institutions and financial instruments just to make money, whether they're bitcoins or blockchains or the ultimate wet fantasy of this corporate vampiric world, AI, that allows you to pretend that you're doing something while all your information is stripped. Because information is the only thing that really matters in this world. Because information and the way you can model it becomes the way you can manufacture, engineer guaranteed certainty within a capitalist utopia such as this. And of course, my point is that that is by definition an oxymoron. You can't, in a true capitalist utopia, guarantee success. The only way you can do it is to cheat, and the only way you can cheat with this one is to own people's information, to sell it so you can predict. And then, of course, you can use the very fact that you can sell it to, which it gives you power, to create alliances with the state, alliances that then allow them extra information upon their people, and so the process just goes on and round and backwards and forwards. And genuine political change becomes simply impossible. Or, in the case of Labour in Britain, if it doesn't become impossible, it becomes ineffective. Starmer's government has done many quite good things, but the problem is that they haven't taken on a system that is poisoning their population. And therefore there it is impossible to be popular. How could you be? As life is slipping away. Rather, people look to radical solutions that says we're going to crack the entire thing. Except they're not. Except the party that's most likely to gain from that, I mean Farage and his rabble, are of course a bunch of corporate bully boys who will sell the entire system, turn it into absolutely empty brands, and claim to you that those brands were what you wanted anyway. It's an act of total charlatanism, selling nothing but the brands. In a world where we've so become husky that we'd almost rather believe the mythology that brands are the truth. And that, of course, is one of the ultimate stages of any such system. We're all turned into ciphers, into something mythological, even to ourselves, as everything that we can do is negated, is moved otherwise. Because the point about the corporate hidden world, the thing I'm calling corporate, but it's just the world of engineered and guaranteed success in a capitalist system, is that it absolutely sucks out everything that is living and makes living itself merely a servant of something else, caught within a different system. And one of the things about being a human in this system is that it is eminently uncomfortable. You would look for a government to change it. But of course they're caught in the system too, so we'll change nothing. And here we are. That is what makes it so dystopic. The system is everywhere, palpable, but slightly hidden, as a vampire is slightly hidden in the dark. Not quite there, and the not quite is just enough to give it a real power. We kind of know it's there. We kind of know that something somewhere is very, very wrong. But actually calling it out, seeing it for what it is, in the bubble and the hubble and bubble that it creates, becomes impossible. As producing new actual products becomes impossible. Everything is a financial institution in the end. A set of people who are changing the rules to guarantee localized success. And we're caught. Your problem is with such a system where we've got to such a stage that probably we have to get to that point where people have nothing to lose anymore before we can smash it. Because what is certainly true is it is unreformable in the end.